Welcome to Better Relationships, Better Life, where relationships expert Judy K. Herman and her guests share insights that can help you move through conflicts in your 9-to-5 jobs and your 24/7 lives. Crack the clarity code and create deeper connections beyond the messiness of relationships. Here's your host, Judy K. Herman.
Today we're talking about how to create psychological safety in the workplace. This is such a valuable episode, especially for leaders, as we address mental health and relationship issues. Let's listen in. I am so pleased to welcome you, Adam. Adam Nemer is the founder of Simple Mental Health, a leadership consulting firm that partners with leaders and organizations to improve employee satisfaction, productivity, and retention by creating mental health literate and psychologically safe mental health well-being cultures. And Adam, I'm so glad you are joining us on Better Relationships, Better Life today, because so much of our lives are lived in that 8-hour workday or 8-hour plus workday, and mental health is extremely important. So thank you for joining us and share with us about you.
Well, you're absolutely right. Work is nothing if not relationships and people working with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is, as you said, Adam Nemer, founder of Simple Mental Health. I spent 20 years as an executive in the largest integrated healthcare company in America as a CFO and operations leader. And I spent the first 15 years of those with significant and undiagnosed depression, anxiety, and panic.
Well, let me hold that for a moment, because undiagnosed, a lot of leaders are living with undiagnosed mental illness. How does that affect a leader? How did it affect you? How did it affect, I guess I'm curious, number one, about your productivity in the company and also your personal life?
Yeah. So depression, anxiety, and panic, it impacted me in that when faced with challenging situations that I interpreted as a stressful situation, when really I was having a panic attack but didn't know it, I could become very angry. I would show up as the leader I didn't want to be. I showed up as an unpsychologically safe leader. When you have anxiety and panic in the workplace, for me, I think there were times when I might have worked at 25% of my capacity.
Wow.
Because you spend so much time worrying and fretting and sadness, and it hurts so much that you don't know. I literally, until I was diagnosed 15 years later, I just thought life was horrible.
Well, let me hold this, because you and I met about, a couple of weeks ago in Atlanta, Georgia. We're both speakers, and I met and heard a little bit of your story. And it's interesting, Adam, that I recently spoke on the topic of psychological safety to a company, and just, the interaction that I had there. So your input here is going to add a whole lot, because as a counselor, I've heard the backstories of a lot of leaders, C-suite executives, people in organizations and leadership. And it really does affect them. But from your point of view, you were in it. So go ahead.
To point a finer point on that, it's 20% of people in America, at least, right? So it's scientifically proven, right? The National Alliance of Mental Illness, the NAMI, look at studies they've done and they've published. 20% of Americans every year experience what a behavioral health clinician would diagnose in a medical record as a mental illness. And that's 20% of all people. That's pre-COVID numbers. So we know it's higher since then. That's not 20% of staff members. That's not 20% of homeless people. That's 20% of people in every walk of life. So when you walk into a boardroom, do the math, 1 out of 5. When you walk into the C-suite, it's 1 out of 5. And so what I try to do is help share the message and help talk about, if I believe that the more leaders share their experiences with mental illness, the more we'll break down the myths and the stigma, and our businesses will improve and mental health will improve.
Absolutely. And you have a very personal story with that. So, Adam, share your point of realizing, because you said you were living with it undiagnosed for a long time. I'm assuming that you were unaware of it. You just thought this is how life is. But share with us those points of transition for you. What was going on in your life that made it all bubble up? Yeah.
Right. When I was 29, I found my father's suicide. We were best friends, business partners, and he was the Rock of Gibraltar. No one knew. You never would have known. Or no one did know that he was struggling. I didn't get enough help that I needed at the time. Just a few counseling sessions, went and got an MBA, got married, had this executive career. And that's what started me on a path towards significant illness. It wasn't once my father's suicide and finding that was not my mental illness. It was just the little thing that started it. And then over 15 years, it just got worse and worse. And again, I didn't know it. I have Crohn's disease, which is an intestinal disease. I had a Crohn's flare every year. I was in the hospital once a week, almost every year. So all of that energy went straight to my intestines. I had three surgeries during that time. And so I really think with hindsight, it all went my mental illness, because I wasn't addressing it and wasn't aware of it. It was showing it through my physical illness.
There definitely is that connection. And actually there's a gut connection between, I went to a recent training on this about the brain and the gut connection. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'm unsurprised to hear that. I would love to learn more about that. So about 7 years ago, I found my mother when she passed. And for the first month, I thought I was doing great. And I got called in. This is how I found out that I had been so sick all these years, is I get called into my boss's office, the senior executive of our organization. He says, "Adam, how you feeling?" I said, "I'm doing great." He says, "Well, I bet you are doing great, and you look fine to me. But would you know the signs to look for in yourself in case you weren't doing well?" I said, I don't. And so he gave me the business card of the EAP, the employee assistance card. He slid it across the desk. He says, "Why don't you give them a call and ask them for what the checklist to look for in yourself?" As I'm walking out the door, he says, "Hey, you want me to call them and let them know that you're calling so they call you back right away?"
Wow. Well, let me go back. I got a question. What is it that your senior executive saw in you, Adam, at that point, and maybe other people saw that you didn't see?
That was a Monday, that meeting. The day before, at his church, he took a mental health first aid class. Mental health first aid is an internationally credentialed class in the United States. It's run by the National Council of Mental Wellbeing. It's like physical first aid, mental health first aid.
Yeah.
He went to the class for the church. The first part of the class is it teaches you what to look for in somebody in case they're not doing well. Showing up late for work, not shaving, disheveled, production has gone down, angry a lot, quiet a lot, leaves work early. So they went through this list in this class, and my boss was sitting there going, "Oh my God, Adam's in a lot of trouble. Oh my God."
Wow.
So he's in this class. They're trying to teach you how to identify if someone needs help. And he was thinking about me.
Wow.
The next part of the class teaches you how to approach somebody in a non-confrontational manner, and so that you listen judgmentally. So he thought about in that class, as they were teaching the class, wow, okay, so Adam's got a problem. I want to help him. Now in the next part of the class, he was thinking about how does he approach me. So when he called me to the office that next day, if he was leading me down the primrose path, He knew that if he said to me, Adam, I'm really worried about you. You check all of these boxes. I would have faked it. And I said, I'm fine. But instead, he provided in that 5 minutes, he provided mental health first aid. He identified that I had a problem from those physical signs I walked through. And he had the courage to just slightly encourage me to get some professional help.
Wow.
Changed my life.
Let me ask you this, because I'll bet there's a lot of senior executives maybe listening to this right now.
Yeah.
And my question is, how much trust did you have with the senior executive? He was your direct boss at the time? And how much trust did you have with him already before he even approached you after going through that class?
Complete trust. Who I work with is more important than what I do. I worked with him for 7 years. I'd never worked longer with an individual. You know what I found in working with this gentleman, his name is David Lake, that you could grow your business performance by being a graceful, merciful, kind leader.
Wow.
It's not about setting targets and having a stern face. It's about love. And he taught me that. Working with him and other leaders like him in my organization taught me how to just be a different sort of leader. So I think that can I go on a tangent for a second?
Sure.
Someone asked
a bunch of questions actually in my head, but I will hold them for you.
Someone just said, I was having this conversation with a coaching client the other day. They said they were talking about one of their leaders. They're like, well, their mental health is none of my business. Like, what are you talking about? It's none of your business.
Yeah.
If they had cancer, would you be worried about them and help them get care?
Yeah.
If they had chronic kidney disease, would you help them? Yeah. So how could this not only that, but it's impacting your business. We need to leaders, organizational leaders, corporate, nonprofit, business, for-profit, you name it. We need to redraw the line of appropriateness. Like you said it at the beginning of this podcast, Judy. You said relationships at work.
Yes.
Relationships are about feelings. They're about people. As leaders need to start talking about our feelings and being more open to these sorts of conversations.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You're so right. And there seems to be some professions that like very left-brained, people who are very logical and they really resist this. I mean, even so a couple questions that I have.
It's how we were taught.
Well, it's how we were taught. Exactly.
It's the society. It's the myths
of
the illness have driven stigma, shame, and silence. So we've created a society in our culture where it's prevalent. I mean, do we say anybody is cancerous? No. We say they have cancer, but we say someone is depressed. Not they're experiencing. It's all over society.
Yeah, it's like the very terms that we use also magnify that stigma, isn't it? Like yeah, my former
words
husband
mean something.
They do. They mean something. And one of my pet peeves, even in writing my book Beyond Messy Relationships, which was the catalyst for me to write it, was my former husband's severe mental illnesses break with reality. I got to see up close and personal some of these. What's going on in, in the mental health industry, and then me personally being in it and also seeing clients, it was a real struggle. But what I'm saying is one of my pet peeves is when people make references, I'm bipolar or he's bipolar or she's bipolar. No, you're a human being that happens to have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but that does not identify you as a whole.
And it's hard. It's really hard because I am so non-politically correct in my language. And so I will refer to myself and say I was the nutty executive. And I go, wait a minute, no, I'm not supposed to say that. I mean, even in jest, I'm constantly, I was trained as an executive. I wasn't trained as a therapist. And so like finding those words, it's a continuous improvement journey for me.
Well, you know, it is for all of us, I think, as therapists. So, yes. Well, let me just back up a minute in your story. I'm curious. Okay, you were trained as an executive. You obviously had a team of people that you were managing, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so let me ask you, if the Adam Nemer who was in that condition went also to that same training that your executive, your senior executive went to, what would that Adam have come out with?
Well, that Adam went to the training.
I mean, before he approached you, or you did go to the training and then, but no, you said that
no, 4 months later.
Okay, 4 months later.
4 months later, we started rolling out mental health first aid on our teams because it was so impactful.
Perfect.
So, but go ahead.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is there's a whole lot of executives that are walking around, perhaps as you have been for so many years, and they may not have the kind of trust relationship that you had with your senior executive. So I guess what I'm saying is a person who already has that they don't even know that they're diagnosed or have it, that significant amount of mental illness, and they went to a training like that. I'm wondering would that Adam have had some aha moments during that training? I don't know. We don't know, but I'm just kind of curious who the training's for and who it could really benefit.
The training is for everybody. We need to make mental health first aid as common as CPR. We all take CPR training. If you're like me, you did it when you were a kid to be a babysitter. You don't get trained annually, right? If you tried to save somebody, you probably kill them. Mental health first aid starts by explaining that it's a real illness, debunking the core myth in society, right? Mental illness isn't a real illness. People just aren't strong. They're just weak. And then it helps you see the signs. Had I taken that class as the hot mess that I was, I think it would have pushed me closer towards getting help, but it wouldn't have been the thing that helped me make the phone call to get help. It was having somebody who had taken the class and had just had the courage to say, hey, he basically said, hey, man, you need some help. Why don't you go ask and see if you might need some help. It was an act of loving kindness.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So
I think the bottom line is it could have been maybe a seed, but everybody's going to be entering this class at different stages, and maybe they are in the midst of their despair, but it could still be helpful to them, maybe, right?
Absolutely. So when you're in the class, you're in it with a group of different people, right? In all different states. And it's one of the values of taking the class as a team, so as a leadership team development opportunity is you get to share each other's stories. Here's the thing, Judy. We all have our story.
Yes.
We all have a story. And if it's not about us, it's about our spouse, our kid, our mom, our dad, or brother, sister. Everybody has a story. And what mental health first aid, teaching this in the workplace does, is it gets people together and it starts sharing, hey, we have stories. First, mental illness is all around us. 20% of our staff are really struggling. So let's help them by starting by sharing our stories. Because once we acknowledge that we all have stories and we've had struggles, then we can start leading in a different way and recognizing and being more empathetic to the struggles and challenges that our employees have. That's
true.
where I think mental health first aid is would have helped me the most at the time. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It really does.
It's just an amazing team building experience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Everyone's got a story.
Yes, absolutely. We all have stories, and none of us are alone. Even our stories may be unique, or we think we're the only ones, but that is a problem when we get into this, this cycle, trying to figure out your own thoughts in your head. That's why it's actually so valuable to go to a therapist, getting some thoughts out and stories out, because the thoughts make so much sense when they're in there, but when you get them out,
you want to tell your story.
But when you get them out, you think, oh, that's crazy thinking. In other words, I think what they say in Alcoholics Anonymous is stinking thinking. We can expose the stinking thinking, right? Yeah.
Here's an observation. It's not funny, but it's an observation for you. I can count on 2 fingers, and I know who they are. I'm not going to say their names out loud. As I've started this business and, told people my story, when you have a private conversation with us, I can count with 2 fingers the number of other business leaders who happened there, then sat down. Once I told them my story, they said, that was like my mom when I grew up. Let me tell you my story. People, It's leaders. We want to tell these stories. That's how I ended up doing this business, Simple Mental Health, is I went all across my company in different MBA programs, giving keynote talks about what it's like experiencing mental illness. I figure if a senior leader would say it, then it would open up the space for other people.
Here's a quick pause for an important message. When it comes to workplace and personal relationships, many of these episodes give us insights into people skills, strategies, and creating a healthy work culture. As a speaker and retreat facilitator, I also support organizations and companies. Go to my media page, judyspeaker.com, to find out how I can help. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Judy K. Herman. And now, back to our conversation. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so it's so important the more we create space for telling our stories, the more our organizations will be bastions of mental well-being. And people will feel, real psychologically safe to show up as their full selves every day.
Absolutely. I had a previous guest, Adam, on my podcast, Rebecca Wong, and she's a trauma therapist that works with couples, but she gave a really good definition of trauma because you've described the trauma that you were exposed to, that telling the story is actually helping the human brain to digest and integrate that story. Otherwise, and the brain is always developing because we have a thing called neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, and we're always new neurons being developed, but that's what the storytelling does. And even being in this field and promoting the simple mental health, that you're doing here, Adam, this is awesome.
I don't understand the science at all.
Yeah.
I just know talking helps.
Yes.
The more you talk, I don't get why processing. I mean, that's, like I said, I was trained in finance and in history in college. I don't understand neuroplasticity. I couldn't spell it. I think it might start with a silent PH as far as I know. But it's just, talking is good. And I mean,
it is
what therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, best executive coaching I ever got.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spent years getting executives coaching to try to help me be a better leader when I was having those bad days. I didn't need all that stuff.
Yeah.
I needed therapy to help me understand that how I feel is a function of how I think and how I behave. So if I want to feel better, I got to think differently and behave differently. And if I do those things, then I'm actually going to be happier at work.
Absolutely.
And I never thought about who would have thought, but putting the realities of the workplace through the cognitive behavioral triangle. Like I said, best executive coaching I ever got.
Yeah.
And it has to be that 20% of leaders out there need it. It has to be.
Well, let me ask you, it's fact. I want to dial this down a little bit, because there may be an executive leader or someone in leadership, and they're just really like, oh my gosh, like what would be their biggest fear? Like, some people are very scared to death to take that step to call a therapist or call their EAP program or whatever. What were some of the fears that leaders go through, and what do they have to bust through?
That's cold, okay. It's cooling off where I am, so I gotta warm up a little bit.
I need to tell people you're actually doing this podcast. It is not a virtual background, but you are actually in Colorado, and it is cold. So I'm glad that you put something there.
I snuck away from my son's college visit. So what was the question again? I'm sorry. I got
no,
stuck.
the question
I
is,
lost it putting my hat on.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So leaders that are scared to death, or like they just don't they don't to take that step. What do they need to do?
Right.
What do they need to bust through? Like how, okay, like the before, okay, I'm gonna ruin my image. I'm gonna like this, I'm gonna that. What are they gonna think of me?
Here's what I thought. I'm gonna be fired. I'm gonna be fired because the stigma that I had in my head was they don't let people be leaders of companies if they have mental illness. They let them do it if they have a heart disease, but not mental illness. I think it's all about the stigma. In fact, that's been studied as well. 80%. So the numbers are very simple. 20% of people every year have clinically diagnosable mental illness. And it's a different 20% every year. Less than 40% get help. And 80% of the people that don't get help say the reason they don't get help is because of the stigma. Stigma of these. What will my boss think? I mean, the only reason, and therapy works, right? So conventional therapies work. It's not like we're looking for the cure for cancer here, right? We know how to help people.
That's right.
There's this illness that's impacting 20% of us, and it hurts as much as any physical illness, impacts your business as much as any physical illness. And we know how to get help. We know that it works. But the only reason we don't get help is just because we're afraid how other people will think about us.
And then little do we know that the anger and the, here's the thing, I've heard this over and over. You think you're hiding, but you're not. I mean, the energy of the anger and the anxiety and the depression is felt and even seen by others. And you think you're hiding, but you are not. So
the feedback that we use words in the workplace. You can be aggressive, or how about this? I was, before I told everybody. Here's a great observation. There was before I told everybody, because I chose, once I was diagnosed, I told everybody. Because my thinking was, if I told everybody, I could keep working and I would get better. So before hold on one second. Crud. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
Before you were telling everybody that the response of people who.
Oh, yeah. So before I told the organization that I was struggling so much, I was considered a high performer, that I was a driver of results. And I was, you could count on me to get results. As soon as I shared with the organization what I was going through, the feedback for me on evaluations, on conversations with people was, is Adam okay? All of a sudden I went from being a hard driver of results to, oh my God, he's really sick. So you think about it, right? I think about all those leaders in the workplace who are exhibiting behaviors of fighting and flighting, right? And we call it's a drive for results. They're successful, they're hard. No, it's what they're really finding afterwards is, no, that was the organization thinks of you differently. And it's yes, why don't people get the help? Senior leaders say they don't get help because of the stigma. And when I talk with businesses about investing in this for their businesses, the number one the challenge that they have up front is, that will be great, but if I help my people understand they need therapy, there's not enough therapists out there. They won't be able to get help. So what good have I done? I've heard that a lot.
Well, let me ask you, is it an issue that they think that the company is going to lose money if people get well and they're not going to be as driven and producing? Is that an issue?
I've not heard that once, because it's really what we're trying to expose for them is this. 1 out of 5 of your employees right now are having an attendance problem. They're not showing up for work. They're leaving early. Like me as a CFO, I might have been working at 25% of my potential. They are when they are in a team, whenever you got more than five, we got 5 people or more sitting in a room trying to solve a business problem, decent chance that one of those people is either having a fighting or a flighting reaction in the moment. I mean, there's a decent chance of that. It's exposing for leaders the remarkable amount of retention problems, productivity problems, and team dynamic problems that they're already having today.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, because I think that it's a shift, because if you've got employees that are maybe they're not going to be driven, but they're going to be like on time. They're going to be making more use of the company's time. They are going to be more productive. They're going to, do better customer service and probably increase revenue along the way. I'm thinking. I'm sure I know that there are some statistics on. I'm just not up on all of that, but I know that there are some statistics on there, how it does improve the company culture and productivity and revenue for companies.
The way I look at it, or a paradigm that I think about in my head, is when you're a leader, your avocation is leadership and management, and you have this toolbox that you're constantly putting your tools in.
Yes.
How to do financial analysis, how to put a budget together, how to put a marketing plan together, how to do bonds, all these various management and leadership tools that you need to put in your toolbox. And your job is to create an environment where everyone can perform at their best.
Yes.
And different people require different sorts of leadership and different sorts of motivation and inspiration for work.
Yeah.
And so when you're more open and aware that, geez, 20% of my people are really scared right now, and they're really worried, and they're inside, they might be smiling, but inside they're shaking.
And their marriages are falling apart, and their kids are like going to rehab and all of that stuff, or even going to rehab, or they're losing their families. I mean, it's a whole thing, right?
So I'm not saying your boss should be your therapist. I'm just saying, leaders, we all need to put mental health literacy, just the knowledge of mental health. Now, the only way I know how to do that is mental health first aid. So that's why I talk about it.
Absolutely.
You put that in the toolbox of leaders, and then you pull it out when you need it and as appropriate.
Well, how beautiful that your senior executive was able to go through a training in a day. Think about you, and you immediately reaping the benefits of that. Like, that is really awesome.
I crashed. It took 7 years to get better, but you got to crash. I had to, 2 days after I saw the EAP person, I had a complete emotional breakdown. I couldn't move for a day. It took 7 years almost to rebuild me, but it was all because a leader at work said, you know what? I'm a leader of people, and I care about the people that work with me. And I know Adam, and I care for him just as I do other people in my life.
Yeah.
And I see that he's struggling now. I know how to help him. I'll just have a quick conversation with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And the years it takes to get well, you're so worth it. For some people, it may not take that long, and some it might, but it's so worth it. Describe in a very quick way, Reader's Digest version there, Adam, a phrase if you can, the Adam now versus the Adam before and the Adam now. What's the difference?
Before, I was not happy, and now I am happy. I was a liberal arts history student in college. And, I really believe in that Greek philosopher, I don't remember his name, Epicurean or Epi something. Life is about seeking happiness.
Yeah.
And I believe that I've heard podcasts where people say, how do you describe mental illness? Right. And I've heard some people say, well, it's the lack of mental health, I heard someone, I'm like, okay. And I heard someone say, you're not happy. And for me, that's really what it was. Before, I was so unhappy that had I not been the child of a suicide, I would have died by suicide. That's how unhappiness hurt me more than my physical Crohn's disease.
Yeah,
Women with Crohn's disease say it feels like contractions during labor. I'd rather have a Crohn's flare than a mental flare, because when you're not happy for mental illness, it just hurts. And now, cognitive therapy, trauma therapy, I ski a lot, I golf a lot, I go to hot yoga.
You are living your life more fully and vibrantly, aren't you, Adam?
I'm able to be happy in the present and not have this sense of constant worry and sadness. I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than I don't get it. Well, I don't get how I can say this, given all the crap I went through, but I genuinely think I'm one of the luckiest and happiest people I know.
That's so wonderful. And here's the thing. Letting those emotions be like flow in your life. That's what I talk about in my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, that your emotions are actually temporary messengers to your soul. So that's like, if you get stuck in depression and anxiety, and they become like permanent residences. So the mental health is allowing them to flow and feeling alive and being involved in your life, right? Yeah. Well, how can folks get in touch with you, Adam? I tell you what, you have so much to offer, and your perspective being in the corporate world and your vision for getting mental health, mental health awareness, mental health first aid into the corporate setting. How can folks get in touch with you?
Well, we have a website, simplementalhealth.com. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under Simple Mental Health. You can contact me directly. My cell phone number is 503-970-2050.
We will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and keep up the great work. I'd really want to support what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mental health literacy is so important for leaders. This conversation with Adam was extremely enlightening, and I appreciate his transparency. Here's some items worth reflecting on. Number one, 20% of employees every year struggle with a diagnosable mental illness, and the only block to getting help, to counseling that works, and available resources is the stigma. Number two, it's important to make mental health training in the workplace as common as CPR training. And number three, the more we create space for telling our stories, the more our organizations will be bastions of mental well-being. What resonated with you? Be assured that I read every comment from those who share their takeaways by filling out the form on the website, betterrelationshipsbetterlife.com. Now, next week, we will have a special episode. We'll talk about the father-daughter relationship. John and Ashley Register have a remarkable and inspiring story that you don't want to miss. In the meantime, please share, subscribe, rate, and comment in the streaming platform of your choice. See you next time on Better Relationships, Better Life.